The sky above Earth was filled with light as the alien ships entered orbit. They moved like blades of silver, sharp and precise, their surface shining with strange symbols that no human could read. People around the world watched the news with awe and fear. The visitors had come without warning, but their presence was impossible to ignore. At the capital city, a grand hall had been prepared for the first meeting. Flags of many nations hung on the walls. Soldiers stood guard outside, their faces calm but tense. Inside, the human delegation sat around a long table. Generals, ministers, and scientists whispered among themselves as they waited. They all knew this was not just another meeting. This was the first real step into contact with a powerful civilization beyond the stars. The air grew heavy as the doors opened. The alien diplomat entered with a slow, deliberate walk. His name was Vorian, and he carried himself like someone who believed he owned every place he stepped into. His tall figure was wrapped in dark robes that shimmered faintly with moving patterns. His eyes were sharp and carried the cold confidence of one who thought of himself as superior. Behind him came aides, also tall and proud, carrying glowing tablets filled with unknown data. Vorian looked around the room and did not hide his expression. To him, the humans seemed small, fragile, and plain. He expected leaders dressed in golden armor or men with crowns, yet what he saw were people in simple suits and uniforms. He let out a faint smile, the kind that carried more arrogance than kindness. Among the humans sat a woman named Myra. She wore a modest suit and held a tablet close to her. She did not speak. She only observed, her calm eyes following every move of the alien diplomat. To anyone who did not know, she looked like an assistant, maybe a translator, someone there to record notes. She was quiet, almost invisible compared to the generals and ministers beside her. Vorian's gaze swept across the humans but did not stop on Myra. He dismissed her presence without thought. Instead, he stepped forward and spoke in a voice that was smooth but filled with pride. His words carried through the hall, translated instantly by a device on his chest. People of Earth, you stand at the beginning of a new age. My people are advanced beyond your imagination. We offer you the chance to rise from your primitive state. But first, you must listen. You must learn. You must accept guidance from those greater than you. The human delegates remained silent, their faces calm. Some nodded politely, others kept their expressions neutral. Myra kept her eyes on him, studying every word and every gesture. Vorian continued, lifting his hand as if blessing the room. We have crossed the void of space. We have mastered power that bends the stars. Your world is small, but it can serve a purpose. Trade, resources, cooperation. But make no mistake, the terms will be ours. You are fortunate to stand in my presence today. One of the generals leaned forward and said, "We are honored by your visit. We are willing to hear your proposals." Vorian smiled, satisfied. He believed he had already placed himself above them. He believed Earth would accept whatever he demanded. His eyes glowed faintly as he looked around, already planning how he would report back to his High Council. Myra remained silent. She wrote on her tablet, recording his words with steady hands. Yet behind her calm face, her mind was sharp and focused. She noticed the way Vorian avoided certain details. She noticed how he presented himself as generous but left no room for equality. She knew the meeting had only begun, and the true test was still ahead. The aides of Vorian placed star maps on the table, glowing with alien symbols. They showed trade routes, resource lines, and stations across the galaxy. The humans leaned forward to study them, though none could understand the language. Vorian watched their confusion with delight. "You see," he said, "your world is a small point in this vast network. With us, you may join it. Without us, you will remain isolated, forgotten, and weak. This is the truth you must accept." The words hung in the air. Some of the ministers exchanged glances, but no one spoke against him. Myra continued to watch, her expression unreadable. She could see his pride, and she could also see the mistake he was making. For now, she remained in the background, letting him speak, letting him underestimate her. That was her advantage. She knew patience was a stronger weapon than pride. As the meeting went on, the atmosphere in the hall became a mixture of tension and silence. Vorian believed he was in control. The humans allowed him to think so. But beneath the surface, something was waiting. Myra's calm presence was like a shadow in the corner of his vision, one he did not care to notice. Yet in time, that shadow would grow into the figure that would stand above him. He did not know it yet, but the leader he sought was already before him, sitting quietly, letting him reveal his arrogance. Outside the hall, the city continued its daily life, unaware of the exact words being spoken inside. People only knew that humanity's future was being decided. Reporters filled the streets. Cameras watched the sky where the alien ships floated like silent guardians. The world was waiting, watching, and hoping. Inside, the first steps of the negotiation had been taken. Vorian thought he had won the first move. Myra knew the game had only begun. And so the arrival ended with pride on one side and patience on the other. Two forces stood ready, though only one of them understood the strength of silence. The meeting hall remained quiet after Vorian's grand introduction. His words still echoed in the ears of the human delegates. He stood tall, his hands folded behind his back, as if waiting for applause. None came. The humans gave polite nods, but their silence carried more weight than he expected. Vorian's sharp eyes swept across the table again. He fixed his gaze on the generals, the ministers, and the advisors. He expected them to respond, to ask questions, to show him the respect he believed he deserved. When they did not, he felt the need to press harder. "You must understand," Vorian continued, his voice smooth but commanding, "my people have dealt with many young civilizations. Some rise because they accept guidance. Others fall because of pride. You must choose wisely." The generals exchanged short glances but said little. A minister cleared his throat, offering a simple reply. "We hear your words, Diplomat Vorian. We will consider the matters carefully." That answer annoyed Vorian. He wanted submission, not patience. He wanted agreement, not delay. He leaned forward, letting his robe flow across the table like a dark shadow. "You may consider," he said, "but remember, hesitation has cost many civilizations their place in the galaxy. Delay is weakness." Myra, who had been silent so far, moved her pen across her tablet. The sound was faint, but it reached Vorian's ears. He frowned and turned to her for the first time. "You," he said sharply, "why do you write when your superiors speak? You are here to listen, nothing more." The room grew still. The generals did not speak. The ministers kept their eyes lowered. Myra, however, raised her head. Her face remained calm, her voice soft. "I write because every word matters," she replied. "Your proposals are important, and they must be remembered clearly." Vorian let out a dry laugh. "Important? To you? You are a recorder. A scribe. Leave the thinking to your leaders." He turned back to the men at the table, ignoring her again. The generals kept silent, though some of them shifted in their seats. The ministers looked down at their notes, but their eyes often flickered toward Myra. She was not offended. She simply returned to her writing, her calm expression never breaking. Vorian began to speak again, presenting numbers, routes, and demands. His aides placed more glowing charts on the table, full of strange curves and patterns. The humans could not understand the alien language, but Vorian spoke as if they should. This, he said, pointing to the lines, is the path of trade. Your planet can serve as a station, a resource supply, a minor hub. We will protect you from hostile forces. In return, you will give us rights to your oceans, your metals, and your energy. A fair exchange. The word minor hung in the air like a blade. No human moved. The generals stared at the map, their faces blank. Vorian smiled, certain that they would accept. Then Myra spoke again. Your charts are beautiful, she said gently, but your numbers do not match. The room shifted. All eyes turned to her. Vorian's smile froze. What do you mean? He asked. Myra lifted her tablet. This trade path you show crosses 4 systems. The distance you gave is shorter than what it truly is. The fuel cost will be higher than you claim. If your ships follow this route, you will lose time and resources. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Vorian's aides looked at one another, their glowing tablets flickering. One of them tapped quickly, checking calculations. His eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing. Vorian forced a laugh. A small mistake, he said. Nothing important. Myra's calm voice cut through again. Small mistakes grow into large losses. If you wish to trade with Earth, the routes must be correct. Your map needs revision. The generals leaned back in their chairs, hiding faint smiles. The ministers folded their hands, pretending to remain neutral. But Myra's words had struck like arrows. Vorian's pride flared. He pointed a long finger at her. You speak beyond your place. This is a matter for leaders, not scribes. Still, Myra did not lower her eyes. Then forgive me, she said softly, for wishing accuracy. Her words were calm, but her tone carried weight. The men beside her nodded almost without thinking. They respected her quiet correction. Vorian's chest tightened. He turned away quickly, unwilling to argue further with someone he thought unworthy of his time. He spoke to the generals again, pretending Myra had vanished. Do not be distracted. We will provide the maps again. Focus on the larger matter. The generals nodded politely, but the spark had already been lit. They had seen Myra stand against the alien diplomat without raising her voice. They had seen her expose flaws in his perfect image. And most of all, they had seen her do it with calm strength that no insult could break. Vorian did not notice how the atmosphere in the room had shifted. He believed he still controlled the meeting. He believed his words still carried the most weight. But in truth, every person at the table now looked at Myra with a new respect. As the meeting went on, Myra returned to her quiet note-taking. Her eyes never left Vorian, studying him, learning his rhythm. Every pause, every smile, every flash of irritation, she stored them away. He thought she was silent because she was weak. In truth, she was silent because she was preparing. When the meeting ended, Vorian rose with confidence. He swept his robe around him and walked out, leaving his aides to collect the charts. He believed the day had gone well. He believed Earth was already bending to his will. but behind him, the human delegation stayed seated for a moment. The generals leaned toward Myra. One of them whispered, "He does not know who you are." Myra gave a small smile and closed her tablet. "That is his choice," she said quietly. "We will let him believe it a little longer." The others nodded, understanding her plan. Outside, the alien ships still floated above the city like silver giants. The world was still watching. And inside the minds of the humans, a thought grew stronger: patience and calm would defeat arrogance in the end. Vorian did not know it yet, but he had already lost the first step of the game. The following day the council gathered once more in the great meeting hall. The air inside carried a sense of unease, like a storm waiting to break. The humans sat ready, their faces calm, their notes arranged neatly. The alien diplomat Vorian entered again with the same pride as before. His long robe shimmered with faint lights, and his tall frame moved with heavy steps that echoed against the polished floor. He spoke without greeting. "Today we speak of numbers," he declared. "Trade, resources, and the cost of growth. Listen carefully, for what I show you will be beyond your current understanding." His aides placed new glowing charts across the table. They spread like rivers of light, full of complex symbols and shifting patterns. Lines crossed between stars, marking paths across vast stretches of space. Strange equations appeared and vanished, their meaning hidden to human eyes. The generals leaned forward, trying to follow. The ministers squinted at the strange signs. The scientists among them tried to make sense of the numbers, whispering to one another in confusion. None could keep up. Vorian watched with satisfaction. His eyes narrowed, his lips curved into a small smile. He thought of himself as a teacher showing children something far beyond their reach. "You see," he said slowly, "our ships move along these paths with efficiency you cannot imagine. The exchange of metals, water, and energy flows through these routes like blood through a living body. Earth can be part of the system, but only if you understand the cost." He tapped the chart with one long finger. "Here, the tax is fixed. Here, the toll for protection must be paid. And here, the share of goods will go to my people first. You may keep what is left. This is the way of progress." The words sank into the room like heavy stones. The generals kept their expressions blank. The ministers nodded slowly, though their eyes showed concern. Only Myra seemed calm. She studied the charts with silent focus. Her pen moved across her tablet, recording, calculating, testing the numbers in her mind. Vorian noticed her again and frowned. "You write once more," he said sharply. "But do you understand anything of what you see? This knowledge is not for assistants." Myra looked up, her eyes steady. "Knowledge is for all who choose to learn," she answered softly. Vorian let out a low laugh, shaking his head. "Then speak. If you claim to learn, tell us what you see." The room grew quiet. All eyes turned toward Myra. She did not rush. She touched her tablet, brought up her own notes, and then pointed gently at one of the glowing lines on Vorian's chart. "This route," she began, her voice even, "is marked as 300 light days. Yet by your own scale, the true distance is closer to 400. Your numbers do not match." Vorian's smile stiffened. He waved a hand. "A slip of the scale. It does not matter." But Myra continued, her tone patient, not mocking. "It matters. If your ships follow this path, they will need 30% more fuel. The cost will rise. The time will double. The trade you promise will lose value before it even begins. The generals leaned back, hiding faint grins. The ministers lowered their heads to hide their approval. Vorian's aides whispered among themselves, checking their devices. One of them frowned deeply but dared not speak. Myra pointed again, moving to another part of the map. Here, your toll is higher than the value of the metals you wish to collect. If Earth accepts such terms, we would give away more than we gain. That is not fair trade. That is loss. The silence in the room deepened. Vorian's face darkened, his eyes sharp with irritation. He wanted to dismiss her words, but her logic was flawless. Her tone was calm, steady, and free of anger. Every sentence cut through his pride like a quiet blade. You speak much for one without rank, Vorian said coldly. Myra closed her tablet and folded her hands. I speak because truth deserves a voice. Numbers are not loyal to rank. They are loyal only to accuracy. The generals nodded faintly, the ministers murmured agreement, and the scientists sat straighter, emboldened by her courage. Vorian felt the room slipping from his grasp. He raised his voice, trying to take back control. Do not think you have defeated me with small tricks. My people command fleets, armies, and knowledge you cannot hope to equal. You may question details, but the larger truth remains: you need us. Myra's calm gaze did not waver. We do not deny your strength, she said gently, but strength without fairness brings only chains. If you wish true trade, then your numbers must respect balance. Otherwise, you do not seek partners. You seek servants. Her words struck harder than any shout could. The humans at the table sat taller, pride swelling in their hearts. Vorian looked around and saw their eyes shining with quiet support for Myra. For the first time, he felt a tremor of doubt. Who was this woman that spoke with such certainty? Why did the men listen to her without question? He pushed the thought aside. In his mind, she was still an assistant, still beneath him. Yet a shadow of unease remained. The meeting ended with no agreement. Vorian swept out of the hall, his robes flowing angrily behind him. His aides followed, whispering nervously among themselves. He did not wait for the humans to escort him. He did not offer farewell. Inside the hall, the humans stayed behind. The generals leaned close to Myra, their voices low. You broke his wall, one said. Myra shook her head. Not yet. His pride is too strong. He will return with greater force. And when he does, another asked. Myra placed her tablet on the table. Her eyes were steady, her voice calm. Then we will let him speak. The more he speaks, the more he reveals. Patience will defeat arrogance. The others nodded, trusting her judgment. They knew what Vorian did not. The woman he dismissed as a scribe was not just a quiet observer. She was their guide, their strategist, their leader. And though Vorian had tried to test them with knowledge, it was he who had been tested instead. Far above, the alien fleet remained in orbit, its silver hulls gleaming against the black sky. To the world below, they looked unstoppable. But inside the meeting hall, a different truth had begun to take shape. The first cracks had appeared in the wall of arrogance. And it was Myra who had placed them there with nothing more than patience, logic, and calm strength. The test of knowledge had ended not with the victory of the alien, but with the quiet triumph of a human voice that refused to be silenced. The sun rose over the capital city, its golden light falling across tall buildings and wide streets. People walked to their daily work, but their eyes often turned upward toward the alien ships still hanging in the sky. They floated in silence, silver giants casting long shadows on the world below. The news spoke of nothing else. Children asked their parents if the aliens were friends or enemies. No one could answer with certainty. Inside the great meeting hall, the council gathered again. The air was heavy with expectation. The previous sessions had revealed much Vorian's arrogance, his flawed numbers, and Myra's calm strength. Today, more was at stake. Vorian entered with his usual pride. His robe shimmered with faint blue patterns, his head held high. He glanced at the humans with a look of cold superiority, though a shadow of irritation flickered in his eyes. He had not forgotten how Myra had corrected him before the others. He told himself it meant nothing, yet the thought remained like a thorn in his mind. The aides followed him, carrying more glowing devices, their faces stiff. They did not look at Myra directly. Perhaps they too had been unsettled by her quiet words in the last meeting. Vorian raised his voice as he stepped to the center. "We continue our talks. I expect progress. My people are not patient." The humans nodded politely. The generals folded their arms, the ministers held their notes, the scientists prepared to listen. Myra sat in her usual place, calm and quiet, tablet resting in her hands. She did not try to draw attention. She simply watched. Vorian began to speak of military strength. He described fleets that could blot out the stars, armies that could conquer entire worlds, and weapons that could destroy cities in moments. His words were meant to remind the humans of their weakness. "You cannot defend yourselves against what lies beyond," he declared. "Without us, you are prey to those who would crush you. Only by joining our system will you find safety." The generals listened, their faces hard. They knew his words carried truth. Earth could not yet match such power. But still, they did not bow. They looked instead to Myra, though they did so subtly, almost without moving. When Myra raised her pen, the generals shifted slightly. When she lowered her tablet, the ministers stopped writing. Every small gesture from her guided the rhythm of the room. Even without speaking, she carried invisible weight. Vorian noticed the pattern. At first, he thought it coincidence. But as the minutes passed, he realized the humans were following her signals. His frown deepened. He turned toward one of the generals. "You understand the danger, do you not? Speak." The general cleared his throat. "We understand the risks, Diplomat Vorian. We also understand the cost of alliances." The answer was cautious, not submissive. Vorian pressed harder. "And do you agree with my terms?" The general hesitated. His eyes flickered toward Myra. She gave the smallest shake of her head. The general looked back at Vorian. "We must consider more carefully," he replied. Vorian's eyes narrowed. He turned to a minister. "Then you. Do you see the sense in what I offer?" The minister looked at Myra before speaking. She tapped her pen lightly against her tablet. The minister swallowed and said, "We respect your words, but our council will decide as one." It was clear now. Myra's subtle gestures carried more weight than his bold speeches. The humans drew their strength from her quiet signals. She had no throne, no crown, no loud voice, yet they followed her without hesitation. Vorian felt a flash of anger. How could they listen to her? She had no rank, no title, no visible power. He had seen her as a mere assistant, a scribe, yet the generals and ministers trusted her more than they trusted him. He leaned closer across the table, his voice sharp. "Why do you look to her? Why do you wait for her to move before you act? She is not your leader." The room went still. Myra lifted her head and met his gaze for the first time that day. Her eyes were calm, her voice soft but clear. I am here to listen. That is all. They act as they choose. Her words were humble, but her calm tone only strengthened the respect in the eyes of the others. Vorian could feel it. The humans were not bound by his presence. They were bound by her silence. The meeting continued, but Vorian could not shake the thought. Each time he demanded an answer, the humans turned to Myra before speaking. Each time he tried to corner them, her quiet presence gave them balance. She was like the center of a circle, holding everything steady without force. At one point, Vorian slammed his hand against the table. Enough of this game. If you wish to survive, you must show me your true leader. I will not waste time with shadows. The generals did not flinch. The ministers remained calm. Myra lowered her gaze, then looked back at him with quiet steadiness. You will meet our leader soon, she said softly. For now, let us finish this discussion. Her words held no threat, no anger, yet they carried authority. Vorian found himself pausing. He had expected resistance, but not patience. He had expected defiance, but not calm strength. The meeting ended with no agreement once again. Vorian left the hall with heavy steps, his robe swirling behind him. He did not look back at Myra, though her image remained sharp in his mind. Outside, the air was cool and filled with the hum of distant city life. Vorian looked up at the alien fleet in the sky. They were his strength, his shield of pride. Yet for the first time, he wondered if even fleets could defeat the kind of quiet authority Myra carried. Inside the hall, the humans gathered around her. A minister spoke in a low voice. He begins to see. He begins to suspect. Myra closed her tablet and gave a small nod. Let him suspect. The truth will come soon enough. Pride blinds him now, but pride cannot last forever. The generals and ministers agreed. They had seen what Vorian had seen: Myra's subtle control, her invisible power. And though she had not yet revealed her true place, the signs of authority were clear to all. The game continued, but the balance had already begun to shift. The days of talks stretched on, and the tension inside the meeting hall grew heavier with each session. Outside, people across the world waited for news. Every channel showed images of the alien ships hanging like silent watchers above the sky. Every street carried whispers of hope and fear. Would humanity bow, or would it stand tall? Inside, Vorian grew restless. He had expected humans to bend quickly, to accept his words as law. Instead, they delayed, questioned, and hesitated. Each time he thought he had cornered them, Myra's calm voice or subtle gesture shifted the ground beneath him. It was like wrestling shadows that refused to be caught. On the fifth day of talks, Vorian entered with his robe flowing sharply behind him. His expression was colder than before, his patience worn thin. His aides walked in silence, their eyes lowered. They had seen him grow more unsettled with each session, though they dared not speak of it aloud. The human council sat ready, as always. Generals sat with arms folded. Ministers arranged their notes. Scientists prepared their records. And Myra sat in her familiar seat, tablet in hand, her expression calm and unreadable. Vorian wasted no time. He struck the table with his palm, the sound echoing like a drum beat. Enough of delays, he declared. I demand to meet your true leader. I will not waste my breath on assistants and shadows. If you respect this council, show me the one in command. His words rolled through the hall like thunder. For a moment, silence followed. The generals did not move. The ministers kept their faces steady. Then, slowly, all eyes turned to Myra. Vorian saw it. The way they looked to her, as if waiting for her decision. His anger rose. He pointed at her, his finger sharp like a blade. Not her. Do not insult me with this act. She is no leader. She is a scribe. A recorder. Do not test my patience. Myra lifted her head and met his gaze. Her voice was calm, her tone almost gentle. You will meet the leader soon, Diplomat Vorian. But before that moment, there is still much to discuss. Her answer only deepened his frustration. Do you mock me? My people command the power of suns. I stand as voice of a council that rules hundreds of worlds. I will not bow to one who hides behind silence. Myra's eyes did not waver. Power is loud. Leadership does not need to be. Her words landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through the hall. The generals exchanged quiet glances. The minister's eyes brightened with subtle pride. Even the scientists sat straighter, as if her calm gave them strength. Vorian felt the air shifting against him. He refused to let it continue. He leaned across the table, his voice sharp. If you are so certain, then prove it. Speak not as an assistant, but as a leader. Show me your terms. Show me your conditions. Myra placed her tablet flat on the table. For the first time since the talks began, she sat forward, her eyes steady, her voice clear. Very well. If you wish to hear conditions, then hear them. The room grew silent. Even the hum of the translation device seemed to fade. Myra continued. First, no path of trade will take more from Earth than it gives in return. If your roots cost more than they bring, they will not be accepted. Second, no resource will be taken without equal exchange. Our oceans, our metals, our energy, they belong first to the people of this planet. Third, protection is not a tax. If you wish to defend Earth, you do so as partners, not as masters. Her words flowed with calm precision. She did not raise her voice, yet every syllable carried strength. The generals nodded firmly. The ministers murmured in agreement. The scientists smiled with relief. Vorian stared at her, stunned. For a moment, he could not find words. He had expected silence or fear. Instead, he had been met with terms as sharp as any blade. You dare, he whispered, his voice low and trembling with pride. You dare to set conditions before me. Myra held his gaze. We dare because this is our world. We dare because partnership is built on balance. If you seek servants, you will not find them here. The hall seemed to vibrate with the weight of her words. Vorian felt his pride clash against something immovable. He wanted to laugh, to dismiss her as foolish, but her calm face stopped him. He could see it now, she was not simply an assistant. There was authority in her silence, strength in her patience. Still, he refused to admit it aloud. He straightened, his robe flowing as he turned away. We shall see, he said coldly. We shall see if your world can stand without us. He swept from the hall, his aides following quickly behind. His steps were sharp, his anger hidden beneath a mask of calm. Yet inside, doubt burned like fire. Who was this woman that challenged him so openly? When the doors closed, the humans sat in quiet victory. The generals leaned toward Myra. One spoke softly. He is shaken. You struck his pride. Myra closed her tablet and gave a small nod. He will return. he will return stronger, with new demands. Let him come. The more he tests us, the more he reveals his weakness. The ministers smiled faintly. The scientists whispered to one another with hope. The hall felt lighter, as if a storm had passed. Outside, the alien ships still floated above the city. They seemed just as strong, just as threatening. But inside the human council, something had changed. Pride had been met with calm defiance. Arrogance had been challenged by quiet authority. Myra rose from her seat, her voice gentle but firm. The time of waiting is ending. Soon, he will know the truth. When that moment comes, we must be ready. The others nodded. They trusted her fully now. She was no longer just a quiet figure in the corner. She was the center of their strength. And though Vorian still refused to see it, the truth was clear to all. The leader he demanded to meet had already spoken. The city outside the great hall was quiet, the normal hum of life momentarily replaced by a sense of anticipation. News of the talks had spread worldwide. People watched from their homes and workplaces, discussing the alien presence and wondering how the negotiations would end. They did not know that the most important moment had not yet occurred. Inside the hall, the human council gathered one last time before the alien diplomat would deliver his final statement. Generals sat in their polished uniforms, ministers held their notes carefully, and scientists prepared data for reference. Myra sat at the center, her tablet closed, her eyes steady. Her calm presence filled the room more than her words ever could. Vorian entered with his usual grace, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. The arrogance he carried like armor seemed slightly heavier today. His aides followed in silence, carrying devices filled with glowing charts, but even they noticed the shift. There was tension, subtle but undeniable, in the way the humans looked at Myra. He stepped forward, his voice firm. This is the last session before decisions are made. I expect clarity. I expect truth. Show me who leads. The generals and ministers sat quietly, letting the words hang. Myra's eyes met his for a moment, calm and unflinching. Then she rose, slowly and deliberately. Every head in the hall turned toward her. The shift was immediate. For the first time, Vorian saw clearly what he had ignored. Myra's posture was confident but not loud. Her face held calm authority. Her presence demanded respect without a single word. The generals and ministers straightened, their eyes bright, their movements subtle but synchronized. She was not a shadow. She was the center of command. Vorian's lips parted, but no sound came. He had expected an older man, a decorated leader in grand robes, a figure of ceremony and power. Instead, the human leader was a woman, standing quietly but radiating control over every person in the room. Myra spoke, her voice steady and clear, reaching every corner of the hall. Diplomat Vorian, we have listened to your words and examined your charts. We respect your knowledge and your power. But this is our world, and we will make decisions that protect it. Vorian stepped back slightly, his hands gripping the edges of his robe. He felt a strange weight settle on his shoulders. Pride wrestled with disbelief. He had underestimated humans. He had underestimated her. Myra continued. Your maps are corrected, your trade routes calculated fairly, and your proposals will be evaluated with balance and logic. Any agreement will respect our people and the resources of our planet. Protection will be a partnership, not a command. This is the way of our council. This is the way of our leader. The room remained silent for a moment, not out of fear, but out of awe. Vorian could feel the invisible power that had always been present but hidden. Myra's calm words, her steady presence, her quiet authority, it all combined to make the hall hers. The generals and ministers followed her lead without hesitation. Vorian swallowed hard. He realized that every time he had spoken to her, every time he had dismissed her, he had been speaking to the person in control. Every plan he had thought would manipulate the humans had already been met and carefully measured by their true leader. You are the leader," Vorian said, his voice low and tight. Myra gave a small nod. "I am. And now that you know, we can speak as equals. Not as master and servant, not as superior and inferior. We speak as partners, if partnership is your intention." Vorian's mind raced. He had faced many civilizations, but never one where a single human could carry such authority so quietly, so completely. He had underestimated not only her, but the human race as a whole. He felt a mix of awe, frustration, and respect. The generals and ministers stood beside her, showing their unity. Their movements were not loud or ceremonial, yet they radiated strength. Even the scientists, who had mostly remained silent until now, watched her with admiration. Myra's calm gaze met Vorian's. "If your goal is cooperation, then we may proceed. If your goal is submission, you will fail." Vorian nodded slowly, understanding at last. His arrogance had blinded him. He had assumed humans would be weak, that leadership would be loud and ceremonial. He had assumed that she, a woman who had quietly observed and guided, was only an assistant. Now, he understood that true leadership did not need titles or displays. True leadership was vision, patience, and authority carried without demand. The hall felt charged with a new energy. The humans were united, not by fear of the alien, but by trust in their leader. Myra had proven that calm confidence could command more than threats, that logic and patience could outweigh raw power. Vorian spoke again, his voice firmer now, tempered by newfound respect. "Then we speak as equals. Your terms will be considered carefully. Your leadership is impressive." Myra inclined her head slightly. "Respect is earned through action, not power. You will see that if you wish to build a true partnership with Earth, it must be mutual." The alien diplomat's pride had been humbled, yet his mind was sharp. He realized that this encounter was more than a negotiation. It was a lesson. He had been forced to reconsider everything he knew about leadership, about humans, and about arrogance. The meeting continued, but the tone had changed. Vorian no longer sought to dominate. He asked questions, listened to corrections, and considered suggestions. Myra guided the council with quiet authority, answering questions, pointing out solutions, and balancing the discussion. The room flowed under her influence, not by fear, but by trust. Outside, the city seemed calmer. People watched from windows and screens, sensing the shift even if they did not know the details. A hope had begun to grow that humanity could stand firm, even when faced with overwhelming power. By the end of the session, an agreement in principle had been reached. Trade routes were corrected, terms were clarified, and protections were outlined. Vorian left the hall with a new understanding of respect. He no longer saw humans as weak, nor Myra as a mere assistant. He saw strength tempered by wisdom, authority carried quietly but completely, and the leadership of a people united. As the doors closed, Myra returned to her seat, calm and composed. The generals and ministers gathered around her, nodding quietly. The scientists whispered encouragement. The hall felt steady, controlled, full of quiet victory. Myra spoke softly to the council. The lesson is not for him alone. It is for all of us. Leadership is not loud. Power is not always visible. True strength comes from patience, clarity, and respect. We have shown the world that even in the face of fear, humanity stands strong. The council nodded, their respect for her complete. Myra had revealed herself fully, not through ceremony, but through quiet, unshakable authority. She was the leader. And the alien diplomat had finally understood it. The day ended with calm resolve. The alien fleet still floated above the city, its presence powerful and threatening, yet it no longer overshadowed the humans below. Leadership had been revealed, respect had been earned, and the true balance of power had shifted in ways no one could ignore. The sun was setting over the capital city, casting long golden shadows across streets and buildings. The alien ships still floated above, silver and imposing, but their presence now felt different. They had come to Earth expecting submission, but instead they had found patience, logic, and calm strength. And at the center of it all was Myra, the leader who had quietly guided her people through every challenge. Inside the Great Hall, the Human Council gathered one last time to finalize the agreement. Generals, ministers, and scientists were present, each showing respect for their leader in subtle ways. Myra sat at the center, her hands resting calmly on the table, her eyes steady. She had led the negotiations with quiet authority, correcting errors, balancing demands, and ensuring that humanity's interests remained protected. Vorian entered, his usual arrogance tempered by respect. He no longer moved with the assumption of superiority. His tall frame and sharp eyes still carried dignity, but he had learned that pride could be a weakness. He glanced around the room and for the first time acknowledged Myra directly. "Leader Myra," he said carefully, "I have seen your wisdom, your patience, and your strength. It is clear now that I underestimated humanity, and underestimated you. We have much to learn from each other if we are to proceed." Myra nodded, her expression calm but firm. "Respect is earned through actions, Diplomat Vorian. You have begun to see what true partnership requires. Cooperation is not command, and strength is not dominance. If we are to work together, it must be on equal terms." Vorian paused, considering her words. His fleet hovered silently outside, a reminder of the power he could bring to bear. Yet he chose to listen, to consider, and to negotiate rather than demand. He had learned humility, not out of fear, but out of recognition of her authority. The generals and ministers began to outline the final terms. Trade routes were adjusted with input from both sides. Resources would be exchanged fairly, with calculations checked for accuracy. Protection would be mutual, with shared responsibility. Myra guided the discussion, her calm voice ensuring clarity, fairness, and balance. At one point, Vorian hesitated over a specific clause regarding energy transfer. His advisors whispered to him, but Myra spoke first. "If we are partners, then the energy we provide must benefit both sides equally. Otherwise, the arrangement will fail, and trust will be lost." Vorian studied her words. They were not a demand, not a threat, yet they carried authority. He nodded slowly, seeing the wisdom in her approach. "Agreed," he said. "The arrangement will reflect equality and fairness. Your guidance is clear." The council worked efficiently, every decision carefully weighed. Myra's leadership was evident in every action. She did not need to raise her voice or issue commands, her presence alone shaped the room. Generals and ministers followed her lead, scientists offered insights that were carefully considered, and even Vorian found himself adapting to the rhythm she set. As the final document was prepared for signature, Vorian spoke again, his tone respectful. "Leader Myra, the galaxy has taught me many lessons, but this council has taught me perhaps the most important. True strength is not in the fleet or in weapons. True strength is in clarity, in patience, and in the guidance of a leader who earns respect without demanding it." Myra inclined her head slightly. "That lesson is not mine alone. It is the lesson of humanity. We have learned through history that calm and reason, even in the face of greater power, can prevail. We lead not by fear, but by example and by wisdom." Vorian looked around the room. He saw the humans' quiet confidence, their unity under her leadership, and he realized that this was what made them formidable. Not weapons, not numbers, but the strength of their minds, their hearts, and their leaders. Finally, both sides signed the agreement. Vorian's advisors adjusted their devices to reflect the corrected routes and terms. The Human Council confirmed each detail, ensuring fairness and clarity. Myra signed last, her hand steady, her expression calm. The document symbolized not submission, but partnership. When the papers were completed, Vorian addressed the council. "This day has changed my understanding. I came expecting obedience, yet I leave respecting not only this council but your leader, Myra. The human race is stronger than I imagined. Your calm authority, your patience, and your wisdom are lessons I will carry back to my people." Myra responded with quiet dignity. "Let this be a beginning, not a lesson in pride. Let it be a partnership built on trust, fairness, and mutual respect. That is how we will grow together, not by one ruling over the other, but by standing side by side." Outside, the city felt lighter. The alien ships still floated above, but they were no longer a source of fear. Humanity had stood tall, and their leader had proven that even against a civilization far stronger, courage and wisdom could prevail. Vorian returned to his fleet with a new understanding. He would report the events to his council not as a story of conquest, but as a story of partnership and respect. He had underestimated humans, and he had learned humility. He had underestimated Myra, and he had learned what true leadership looked like. Back inside the hall, Myra addressed her council once more. "Today we have shown that leadership is not about force or arrogance. It is about clarity, patience, and standing firm in one's principles. Remember this, not only in dealings with others but in our own decisions. True strength comes from wisdom, not from fear." The generals nodded, their respect for her complete. The ministers smiled, inspired by her calm guidance. The scientists whispered approval, amazed at her ability to lead so quietly yet so powerfully. The day ended with calm resolve. Myra had proven herself not only to the alien diplomat but to the entire human council. She had shown that leadership could be quiet and still strong, that patience could overcome arrogance, and that respect could be earned without threats or displays of force. Vorian's fleet lifted off from orbit, silver ships moving silently through the sky. He had learned a lesson he would never forget. Humanity had earned his respect. And Myra, the quiet leader who had guided them through the challenge, had earned her place not only in the council but in the galaxy's story as a symbol of strength, wisdom, and true leadership. Humanity had stood tall, and their leader had shown that even the mightiest arrogance could be met with calm authority and patience. The galaxy had taken notice, and the future, guided by clear minds and steady hands, looked brighter than ever before.